the late K.V. Anand's first film, is arguably the most beautiful Priyadarshan film. He managed to create a fictional world out of thin air populated with people and places we had never seen before. The best part about this film is how it's beautiful all throughout. The painstaking image making is as evident in the lovely songs as it is in a seemingly mundane confession scene set in a cattle shed. A comedy scene with top-angle shots and movement was treated with as much care as a hero introduction scene. The film created the Priyadarshan aesthetic, a pattern he and other directors have been trying to replicate ever since. Malayalam cinema has had many films set in and around the Bharatapuzha, but the river becomes much more than an aesthetic choice in this breathtaking film. Directed by Jayaraj, this again is a film that will never age. It does not have to explain its time or setting. Staging choices like how the teacher controls his students using his big toe or the pot with the Kathakali face painted on it are reminders of how individual visuals can briskly take you back into the film's world. This too is a fairly monochromatic world with the brown of the characters' bare bodies matching the browns of the soil and the mud walls. Rewatching Kalivi Durangelo today, you see the connection between a waterless river, a stationary boat, and a parent who has just lost their son. Shot jointly by Renato Berta and Santosh Shivan, Shaji and Karun's third film is also arguably his most beautiful. In his film Piravi, Rain became a central character, giving company to a father who has to wait endlessly for his son's return. In VANAPRASTHAM, mere mortals are asked to stand in for the roles reserved for gods. A recurring motive is Chayam, or the makeup work by Kathakali artists. A great performer with the help of makeup can become the character he plays on stage. But what happens when the Chayam refuses to come off? And what if you don't want to wash it away to avoid going back to reality? The loaded film requires one's full attention, but that's the case with the visuals too. Every frame is truly a painting. It's the visuals of Pottum Thottu that elevate a seemingly regular revenge thriller to a higher place. Quite literally. Shot by Ravi Chandran, the film used cranes like we'd seldom seen before to give us maddeningly disorienting top-angle shots that took you in and out of houseboats on the Vembanad. Kuttanad too looked different in the movie. The edginess of the film's lead spilled over to the film's visual language too. There's beauty, but never comfort. There's a lot of green and blue skies, yet not a moment of calm. The effect is that of an entire film shot in dizzying Dutch angles. In other words, the film's visuals are seductive, but it's certainly not empty beautification, a lot like its hero in Bhadra. If Lal Jose later became our primary visual director of the 2000s, it's largely due to the visual success of this moderately successful film. The Dileep Star is a film that continues to live on for the beauty of its songs, and in Lal Jose, we finally found a director who could match Vidyasagar's music with visuals. Like THENMAVIN Kombath, CHANDRANUDIKKUNNA 2 exists in a place that falls somewhere in between dreams and reality, and S. Kumar managed to co-build this world you'll only see in novels. Another Jayaraj film to make the list is the story of two political ideologies, two brothers and two mothers. Among the first shots track the rapid movement of plantain leaves in a banana plantation. We don't see people, but the static frame gives us enough clues to suggest that someone is being attacked. Shot almost entirely in natural light by Ravi Varman, the film embraces the mood and the melancholy of cloudy skies. As we wait for the rains, we are also waiting for an inevitable tragedy. Kuttanad is simply home and nothing more in Blessi's culture. There's no outsider's gaze when we see this region. So a boat can become a school bus and a canoe can become a grocery store. It's more a window into a lifestyle than an aesthetic choice. The remoteness of the place contributes to a love for the innocent characters. These images also get us to see the alienation of a lost boy who grew up in a desert in Gujarat, now trying to survive in the backwaters. I have a weird theory that the film is basically E.T., but that's for another day. A lot more natural than the world of Chattakari is Shyama Prasad's interpretation of Anglo-Indians and their lifestyle. This too is a film that we recollect from a novel long forgotten, complete with cobblestone streets, crystal figurines and a lighthouse at Land's End. The 70s art design and costumes too are done with utmost sincerity. We see characters watching Sholay during its release and old defunct movie theatres coming alive again. It's an anachronism of a film that finds beauty in the littlest of things. Directed by Santosh Shivan, Ananthabhadram begins in the form of a grandma's tale being handed down from a mother to her son. It is set in a place where flames of fire talk to each other with tiny snakes guarding big secrets. No one but Shivan could have visualized such a film. a mix of folk tales and fantasy, we seldom see such scale in films of its genre. With his association with Mohanlal's Burrows, this is the visual zone I hope he gets back to. Big B is less a movie and more a cultural marker for an entire generation. The most obvious change it brought about was through its look. Raised on Star TV and video games, the film looked like the wet dreams of the English-thinking Malayali fanboy. There was style in every frame. It made the Tata Safari a status symbol, a shotgun a plausible weapon in Fort Kochi, and Bilal, our biggest style icon. Bilal might not have changed, but Malayalam cinema hasn't remained the same since Big B's release. Directed by VK Prakash and shot by Jomonty John, this friendship story completely justified its title. It had a freshness in every frame and a pair of lenses through which even Panampalli Nagar looked new. Given that the film was mostly set indoors, the scenes where the quadriplegic Stephen Louis finally stepped outside felt like a victory for its viewers. The contrast, the many shades of white, the music and the rains contributed generously too. Lijo Pellisheri, collaborating with Abhinandan Ramanujam, created his own surreal universe for Amen. People look and behave a certain way, angels appear in dreams, and the trumpet is the primary musical instrument. Beef cutlets got their own POV shots, and a slow-mo food fight is filmed like it was the last of the Napoleonic Wars. But there's a remarkable amount of consistency among all living and non-living things, and a devotion to its uniquely quirky pitch. Why make sense when you can make a work of art instead? Can a mass film ever look beautiful? Shot and directed by Amal Neerath, the film brought period swag to modern Malayalam cinema. It placed King Lear before a backdrop of tea plantations and communism, and the result was a hefty film that packed both style and substance. Few villains have had as much raw appeal as Angu Ravatar, and not many heroes have been able to pull off the period look like Fahad Fasil. It may not be perfect, but a deficiency of coolth is not one. PREMAM is a season more than it is a film. It is also a film that owes much of its immense rewatchability to Anand Chandran's cinematography. Certain shots teach you why a certain something is called golden light. The film is 7 years old, but you could watch it in 2031 and still think it's going to release the next week. There's a harmony between the intentionally bleached out love songs and the rustic grungy texture of Kalipu. No location is special, yet they appear so. No one looks extraordinary, yet they've come to define what's handsome and what's beautiful. Charlie is among a handful of films that can claim the visual quality of a graphic novel. This is important because it helps us delineate realism from the film's otherworldly pitch. It's easier to think of DQ's Charlie as a fairy godmother with a heart of gold rather than a real person with EMIs and daddy issues. The music video quality spreads right across the movie, and the art direction by Jayashree Lakshmi Ramnarayan is already the stuff of home decor legends. Parava isn't a film that believed in broad strokes. The film wants to zoom in on the smallest of characters doing the most innocuous of things to present us with a story that has room for heroism, love, despair, triumphs and losses. For people from the area, Mattancheri was always sidelined for the colonial beauty of Fort Kochi. But Parava got Mattancheri right like no one had before. The pigeons, shot painstakingly by Little Swayam, was also a triumph in itself. It's a visual pursuit even bigger films don't seem to bother with. Personally, as someone who grew up in Mattancheri, the film is all kinds of warm. Kombalangi Nights is not just a beautiful film, but it's also the idea of how beautiful Kerala is for lakhs of outsiders. But nothing is intentionally special about Shauju Khalid's cinematography, although he appears to have the gift to make everything look special. Despite the brothers' broken home with no doors or toilets, any one of us would still happily move in with them. You can watch the film without subs and sound and still appreciate it. But don't be fooled by these picture postcards. Flip over to the backside and it's filled with text that can fill entire textbooks. This is the film to beat if anyone wants to come close to recreating the most stylish images of the 70s. Right from the visuals of Kerala in the period to showing us Bombay like we had seldom seen in our films. Its mega success is proof that certain films need to be enjoyed on the biggest of screens, even if you have to wear a mask right through its duration. The tiny stretch set in Persia, the vintage cars, DQ's wardrobe and an eerie murder somewhere in the middle, it's impossible to take your eyes away. Director Rohit proved that his brain works very differently with the original imagery in Iblis. He goes a step further with the absolutely beautiful Kala, where violence is poetry. The film about class struggle questions our notions of hero and villain, and it gets you there by leaving behind images that are burnt into our system. Set in the most idyllic of places, it's hard to imagine a place so beautiful, holding so many deep, dark secrets. It's one thing to try to recreate the aesthetic of a filmmaker like Edgar Wright, but it's something else to marry that thought with a distinctly real, culturally significant region like Ponnani. Leave aside how painfully underexplored this subculture has been, but to make a film so good looking and to come out with such a huge success only speaks volumes of how much the audience have evolved. The fight scene in the theatre alone deserves its own fans association with a secretary, a treasurer and even a president. Which films would you add to this photo album? Do mention in the comments.